The next archangel we want to talk about is Imperius, the archangel of valor. Imperius is probably the biggest ass kicker in Diablo continuity. Well, until you guys get your hands on the game, that is. Imperius is one of the funnest new characters we've developed. This guy is pretty much, he is very commanding. He's just absolute badass in combat. He lives to tool out demons. He's been fighting since the dawn of time. He's killed, billions and billions of demons, and he's real good at it. And he tends to be a very loud voice on the council. You can imagine sometimes he almost kind of bullies things to get his way. The dangers for someone like Imperius is that valor, can so often, kind of turn to pride. And for that reason, Imperius and Tyrael kind of go at it from time to time, right? They're kind of the two older brothers, and they kind of get under each other's skin often, right? They have very different views on things like the nature of creation, things like should mankind have a right to exist, or should they be nuked entirely? They don't necessarily agree on those lines. So again, Imperius is just one of the coolest new characters we've developed. And as we hit the last guy, this is Ethereal, the Archangel of Fate, the great lore keeper of the high heavens. This guy can't literally tell the future as such, but he sees the various strands of possibility that weave into the future. He's a guy of kind of vast knowledge. He kind of rarely speaks, but he's definitely this guy that they go to in times of crisis to try and figure out, should we go left, should we go right? An interesting thing about Ethereal is that while in the universe out there, he's pretty much got things dialed in. Since the World Stone was stolen and Sanctuary created, I think this is true. I may just get in trouble. All right. Just wanted to double check.
Chris gets it right.
Stuck my foot in my mouth. He can't see mortals. Mortals were not meant to exist, right? So he cannot see the skeins of our destiny, right? And that weirds him out. And by extension, it weirds the other angels out too. Mortals are just the Gordian knot that these guys have no answer for, right? We vex them. We vex them highly. So guys, that's a kind of quick sketch look at the Angerus Council. It'll kind of be interesting to see here as the Diablo franchise gets moving here, how these guys may or may not play out. But we had a lot of fun developing them. So now I'm going to hand it off to Leonard, who's going to tell us a little bit about the bad guys.
That's okay. Thanks. All right, let's talk about the Lords of the Burning Hells. I got this. Originally, the Burning Hells were ruled by the three primevals, Diablo, Mephisto, and Baal. And subordinate to them were the lesser evils, Belial, Azmodan, Duriel, and Andariel. And as Chris has already mentioned, from the beginning of time, they were involved with the high heavens in the eternal conflict, basically a war to see who would hold sway over all of creation. And this went on until the discovery of the existence of Sanctuary. Once again, as Chris has mentioned, this was created by renegade angels and demons. So this was something new in all of the history of time, something that both angels and demons had a stake in, that they were responsible for. And this led to a surprising development. They called a truce in the eternal conflict. But even more than a truce, they agreed to a non-interference pact. They said that neither side would interfere with the development of mankind on Sanctuary. Now, of course, the primevals, being the primevals, had no intention of living up to their end of this bargain. They theorized that mankind, left to their own devices, would drift over to the side of darkness easily enough, of course with a little bit of a push here and a shove there, provided by the primevals themselves. This didn't sit well with the lesser evils, especially Belial and Azmodan, and they made their displeasure known by starting a civil war in hell. Now, this civil war went on for quite a while, until even the minions and armies of the primevals turned on them. And the primevals were overwhelmed by the sheer numbers, and they lost this civil war. This led to them being exiled to Sanctuary in what is known as the Dark Exile, and this in turn led to the events of Diablo 1 and 2, where they were hunted down and captured by the Horadrim. And if you all recall, in Diablo 1 and 2, they escaped their imprisonment, and it's your job to hunt them down again and destroy them. But you don't only destroy the primevals in those games, you also destroy Andariel and Duriel. So for those of you keeping track at home, that means that there are 2 Lords of Hell unaccounted for. So the first Lord of Hell that you meet in Diablo 3 is Belial. He's the Lord of Lies. He is a master of subterfuge and deception. He's very insidious, but he doesn't like to get his own hands dirty. He likes to use underlings for that purpose. This is Magda. She's a witch. She leads the coven. It was filled with dark cultists who have pledged their life to the service of Belial. They are the antagonists that you meet for the first good portion of the game before you ever run into Belial, and they're a lot of fun to deal with. Also on Belial's payroll are these snake demons, in keeping with the theme of deception. That is what Belial is all about. These guys can disguise themselves as human beings, so you'll never know when you're dealing with them or when they're going to turn into demons and attack you. Now, as far as Belial himself, he's all about corruption from within. He's not an in-your-face kind of guy. He likes to manipulate his opponents. He likes to play on their fears and mistrust to turn them against each other. And he somehow used these techniques to take over the most important trade city in the world, Chaldeum. He's also sent his cultists, the Coven, and the snake demons out into the borderlands surrounding Chaldeum, and they've driven thousands of refugees into the outskirts of Chaldeum. But the city has been closed, so they have this refugee crisis. There's starvation, there's disease, and you need to figure out how Belial has accomplished this, how he has taken control of the city, and what his plans are before all these people die. Moving on, we get to Azmodan, the Lord of Sin. Now, Azmodan, as the Lord of Sin, has as his lieutenants the 7 deadly sins. In our game, you're only going to meet 2 of them. And the first one we're not going to talk about today. You're going to have to play the game to find out who that is. But the second one is Sedea, the Maiden of Lust. Now, some of you may recall that 2 years ago, at BlizzCon, the costume contest winner was dressed as the Maiden of Lust, who at the time was known as the Mistress of Pain. It's a funny story. She was cut from the game, actually. She wasn't even in the game at that point. We had had the concept made for her, and we had kind of tossed her aside, said, you know, she's cool, but we really don't have a place for her. But once we saw the costume contest winner, we're just like, that is so awesome. We have to make sure to put her back in the game. So we found a nice spot for her as one of Azmodan's lieutenants. She's kind of like... So you guys do have an effect on what we do. She's a little bit like Belial in that she likes to psychologically torment the player, likes to taunt him, likes to get under his skin. Azmodan is different than this. Azmodan's all about raw, unbridled power. In these concepts that you're going to see over the next minute or so, this is our visual development of Azmodan. We wanted to show his raw power. We wanted to show his royalty. He's got a crown in this one that turns into like bony protrusions on his head in this shot. We really wanted to show, I mean, he basically ruled hell for 300 years after the Dark Exile. So we wanted to show his power, we wanted to show his royalty, but on top of everything else, we wanted to show his greed and avarice and his basically being ostentatious. He's got like all this gold on him. He's got all this, you know, these trappings of greed and gilding. So let's talk about Azmodan as a personality. Like I said, he's not into deceit. He's not into hiding. As a matter of fact, from the very beginning of the act, you know exactly where he is. You just can't get to him. He's behind the demon invasion that Deckard Cain has been warning everybody about for 20 years. And you can't get much more out in the open than spearheading a demon invasion. As you guys saw in the opening ceremony, we showed the cinematic that has him confronting Leah, and he's about 2 steps ahead of the player. He knows that you're coming for him. But even more than that, he knows about the Black Soul Stone. Now, I'm sure you all have questions about what the Black Soul Stone is, but let's just suffice it to say that the Black Soul Stone is a very powerful artifact that you're going to use to capture and destroy him. But he knows that if he gets his hands on the Black Soul Stone, he will be able to wield more power than any Lord of Hell has ever wielded before. The fact that he knows this is bad news, and it's quite a surprise to the player when you find out. So obviously, you need to get your hands on this artifact first and keep it from him. And lastly, and possibly most importantly, Azmodan here is the last Lord of Hell. You've defeated Belial, you've defeated all the other Lords of Hell in the other games, so that means that there are no more lords of hell. The burning hells are wiped out. There's no one left to influence or unduly corrupt sanctuary. Once Azmodan is defeated, all evil will be gone forever. At least that's the theory. And then there'll be happiness and rainbows for everybody. Kevin? Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
Oh, that is me. Guys, a little earlier we were talking about relooking at different parts of the continuity of Sanctuary, and I think word of one of the specific kind of changes we're running with. Did it get out a while ago?
It's kind of hinted at in the beta.
Totally. Brain just is not working this morning. So in the beta, you can kind of tell we have given the Dark Wanderer from Diablo 2, we've given him an identity. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why, right? Again, I know that retcons and things like that can really piss people off. And we are very, very sensitive to that, right? We don't put anybody off. We want you guys to enjoy these ideas, as it turns out. It would be wonderful if everybody just woo-hoo. But we know from time to time things fall out, and I wanted to address the Dark Wanderer issue. The reason we gave this guy an identity, well, I'll give you a weird one right off the top of my head. I'm not announcing anything, by the way, as I get into this, but let's say theoretically, I swear to you I'm not announcing anything. If you were theoretically going to try to tell the story of Diablo in a different media type, if you're going to try and novelize Diablo, or do a movie of Diablo, or do a mini-series, wouldn't a Game of Thrones mini-series of Diablo be mega?
He's not announcing anything.
I'm not announcing a damn thing, but I'm announcing loudly that I want it all. Is there any Hollywood people in the audience? Come and talk to Leonard. So, if you're attempting to tell this story, right, outside of the bounds of the game series as it stands, this guy's the guy. He is the hero from Diablo 1 who selflessly took, Diablo's power into himself, and now thus tortured, crossing the wastelands, is now trying to travel to the east to get rid of this evil demon. Of course, the demon inside him wants to have, a party with his brothers. So it's potentially, I don't know, an interesting story. I don't know if you wanted to do a mini-series or a movie or something. So even at that level, I was very keen to guys, we have to answer this question. It's going to be awkward. Like, wait a minute, I killed Diablo with my rogue. Well, Dark Wanderer clearly is male, so it's like already we were, forcing a solution on this thing. So again, I just wanted to address the issue. In particular, the identity we gave him is Leoric's oldest son, Aiden. The idea is that Leoric had two boys. Albric, the young one, he doesn't end well. Well, hell, none of them end well. Boy, Leoric's family just gets worked. But the idea kind of is, if memory serves, is that Aiden, as Leoric is falling to darkness, as he's kind of going nuts, he's possessed by Diablo shortly before the events of Diablo 1. And he sends Lochdanan and the armies of Condorus north to Westmarch, which is actually kind of like an allied kingdom, really. His war is madness, right? He's just trying to, Diablo, through him, is trying to get rid of anyone that would be able to stand against him as he corrupts his town. So essentially the hook is, Aiden, always trying to please his dad, which is maybe a played-out theme, I get it. But he goes north with the armies, and he is obviously absent for the events of leading to Diablo 1, and ultimately, if you're telling this thing as a film or whatever, you pick up your story as he comes home, like, where's Dad? He went batshit crazy and he's a skeleton. Well, where's my little brother? Well, we think the Archbishop took him down under the old church there. Draw your own conclusions, right? So it's a nice, it's a really nice way of, Lazarus. It's actually a really nice through line, right? So again, that was our thinking. It's a character with immediate, total emotional investment in these events, and it makes a real nice story. So again, I just want to get out in front of it and address it. We know that it's a little jarring, right? But we felt very strongly that it just really works. It makes the universe better most of the time. Sometimes mistakes happen in terms of lore, right? I've had a couple.